Thank you for joining. I will start with a quick introduction into energyPRO and what it is. I think most of you are familiar with WinPro, so I will kind of get you from in the start of energyPRO and get you moved into the program itself. But energyPRO is a software for modeling, analyzing, and optimizing complex energy systems. And in this case, it's an RTC tender. We have the same modular structure as you probably are known with WinPro. And I'm not going to dive too much into them. I'll just introduce that we have the same structure. For this project, I use design, optimize, and also a bit operation. We are widely used in Denmark for district heating, and the last 10-15 years, we also moved into a lot of hybrid projects, Power to X and stuff like that. But this program is purely made for, in the beginning, 25 years ago or something, for district heating sectors, and slowly moved away from that into generalized energy systems. This case I made a RTC tender contract on 250 megawatts for a base load, and you will have a commitment of 80% of that, and the penalty will only be for whatever that's below that 80%. The settlement tariff I'd gone with is 5,000 Indian rupees. This is just for showcase, and also the penalty for a shortfall is 1.5 times that, meaning it will be 7,500 rupees. We have an annual RTC tender demand on around 2 gigawatt hours, and I also left a room for peak RTC in the model. But I tried to take the most simple approach, because if we take too many tenders into this one, it could be quite confusing. But it is fairly easy to add on another peak RTC. On the right side here you'll see the model itself. We have a PV plant and a wind farm. These two calculations from this is made in WinPro, and the time series are imported into this model directly. I can quickly show you before we start how easy it is to import time series from WinPro into energyPRO. I made an RTC conversion unit, and it can be like a little bit counterintuitive, but how you should see this is that what comes in comes out in the same megawatt perspective, meaning that if I have 250 megawatts in, 250 megawatt comes out. It can go between 0 and 100%, meaning that it can deliver everything between 0 and 250 megawatts hours or megawatts. What it does, it converts this into an RTC fuel, and this is because I want to be able to make some payments on this fuel rather than electricity alone, because if you start to have spot market and other RTCs into this, I want to have them separated in order to have a payment that's directly on this. We have a storage that's built into this model, and this storage is basically the annual RTC, so meaning that if you have to deliver 250 megawatts around the clock, you will have these 250 times 8,660, the amount of hours that's on a year. And you can see this as a counter inside energyPRO. So this counts towards the end of the year, and it sees how many megawatt hours we produced. And then I have this punishment payment. Basically, it accounts for all the shortfall we have had throughout the year, and it gives me a punishment in my payment. I have not decided to include the spot market in this, so normally you are allowed to go produce to the RTC and the spot market, but I left this out in order to make the model more simple. So if we dive directly into energyPRO here, or maybe I should start with showing how to import from Excel or WinPro. So here we have a time series for approximately 1 year. We have the power production here, and we have the time here. This is normally just something you can export from renewable, and it's fairly easy to actually import this. So you just have these time series here in this program, and you add new time series. And then you paste, and then you have this power curve or production curve already built in. This is what I have done with both the PV plant and the wind farm. So as I talked with you about before, is that I have a fuel storage built into this, which is how much that needs to be produced over a year. And I have 2 RTCs here. This is just to showcase that we have the 80% of the RTC here, and then we have the 20%. And whenever you are below 80%, this punishment payment will kick in, but you can still produce to this one and don't have a punishment. I made one scenario without a battery and one with a battery. So what's nice about energyPRO is that you have these scenarios here where you have your reference case. In this case, it's without a battery. And then I can create an alternative with a battery, and I just press calculate, and it will calculate how the economic are with a battery suddenly. And it will give you an option to actually compare these two. The cash flow for these two. Here you go. And then you can see you earn much more with a battery. If you look into the production curve, and this is basically, it showcases how the production are in each hour all over a year. So we can see here, the first one is the electricity produced. We have the blue color, which is a wind farm. We have the red color, which is a PV plant. And then we have the store discharging. And in this case, the store is the battery I put into the model. So we have these production here. And the green line here is the combined output of these two. So you can see that at some points there's a shortfall, but we also utilizes the battery when there's not enough production to cover the RTC. Then we will have this one. This is the fuel storage I was talking about before. And you can basically see this as a counter towards how far am I towards my RTC. So if I go to the bottom here, I can drag, and then you can see I'm slowly fulfilling it. I made an RTC which are based on a year. You can change this to be monthly or quarterly, whatever your preference is. I just made it for a year, and you can see when we come up here towards the end of the year, we have fulfilled it. And when we go towards the next graph here, this is the battery. You can see the blue color, which are the charging, and the yellow color, which are the discharging, which corresponds also to what you see up here. If we go back towards our reference case, which is without a battery, we can also look into the production graphic of this. Now we don't have any, what to call it, batteries, so we're not going to see that graph, but you can see the 10 is around 250, so we have a lot of shortfall in this as well, and we don't utilize the RTC fully. Of course, you're not going to have an RTC without a battery, so this is just a reference to see, okay, how much of an impact does my battery have towards my system. When you're choosing the battery size in energyPRO, you have 2 different options. You have the option just to try out, pick a number, and then you can choose the size from that and see how much money I will earn with that size of the battery. But we also have this option called an optimizer, which is basically it goes in and see the economy inside your system, and you start putting in an upper value of your battery. You have a specific investment, you have an expected lifetime, and then the model will go in and calculate how much money can I earn with changing the battery size, but there will be a point where the battery size will be too big, and you will start losing money compared to investment. And then it will find the optimal size from that one. You only do this when the whole economy in the model is built up, because as soon as you change some economy in the model, it could be your RTC value, how much electricity you have to deliver, or it could be some tariffs or other stuff that will change the whole economy. You have to do this optimization again. Yes. Also, if we go in and look again, I showed you this briefly before, that we have this cash flow. So this is quite a big number, I know that, but you can see with the reference case here, we deliver what's equivalent to 5.6 billion Indian rupees worth of energy, but we also have a punishment on 3.5 billion. So we actually end out after a year only with 2.1 billion. Or only, it's still a lot of money, but compared to if you have a battery, you will earn 9.5 billion, and you are actually able to deliver for this shortfall. To show you how this one works, I have made this only to work once per year, which is the last hour of the day, meaning that it will not fill up the battery before the very last hour in this year. I'll just show you with the reference instead, because then it's more. It's a bit slow now, the model, but basically when we are at the end of a year, this will read into this storage, see how much that's left in the storage and fill this up. And depending on how much big this value is, we'll have a punishment payment. And this is also what you're going to see at the end of the year here. We have this red bar, which corresponds to the punishment payment, meaning that it will have 872,000 megawatt hours shortfall. So you could see this as a virtual unit that gives you a punishment inside your system. I think that's what I have to say about the RTC case. And then we can continue with the presentation. Yes.
Yes, now I will take over. Welcome, everyone. So we created a special offer for you, and if you would like to try out energyPRO, you can download it from our website, which I will send a link to in a second. And in a message field, you only need to write a code, energyPRO India. So our sales department will reach out to you with a 3 weeks demo license for energyPRO. So you are more than welcome to do that. Before that, I'm also sending one more message in the chat right now, which is about a workshop that you are welcome to join in India, where the workshop will be led also by Niklas and Adit. And it's free of charge, and only a few spots are left. So if you would like to join, you should register as soon as possible. And below that message, you have now the link to download energyPRO from our website. And remember to use the code energyPRO India. And now I am giving back the microphone to my colleagues.
I can see there's been some questions in here, so we could try to wrap them up and answer those.
Yes. So just what I'll do is I'll take the questions one by one, sort of pitch it to Niklas, and then he's going to answer them, and maybe we supplement them with some more information if necessary. But Niklas, the first question is from Natsai. He asks which generation number to consider, the gross or the net production, and if it's the net production that we're talking about from these, wind or solar farms, then is it P50, P75, or P90? Is the question. And if I may jump in really quickly before sort of handing that question over to Niklas, typically, let's say this would be your net production, your production after all your losses that you would want to consider usually over here. Because if you're modeling all of your losses, let's say more accurately in a software like in WindPro, you import or export those time series, and then you bring them into energyPRO for your calculation. So now whether you want to do it with P50 or P75 or P90, I think typically would be more of a business decision as to what you're looking into, what you're trying to, what your objective is. But I'll let Niklas add on more if you would like to say more about that.
I agree with what you say, because this is like the energy in here is what you need to deliver for the RTC. So, but you're also able to make some formulas in energyPRO that accounts for losses as well, which in something called conversion table. But either way, it is what you said, we need to provide.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, from the limited knowledge that I have of energyPRO, there's also, as you said, Niklas, there's the function, or you can add functions to add extra losses on top of whatever time series you're bringing into the project. So that could be, maybe Niklas, you could elaborate a little more on that, on how this could be done, or even shown if there's, since we do have plenty of time.
Yeah. So I'll just talk a little bit about energyPRO. In broad, here we have the time series, which are imported here, or you can make your own time series. I also have the day ahead prices as a time series here, as you can see. But then we have another function called time series functions, and this is where you can manipulate your time series. You can make it dependent on other factors. So if you want to, for example, have your power production, and you want to have a loss dependent on how much power you deliver, you can make something called a conversion table, or you can make a formula yourself and saying loss. And then basically what you can do is that, say, your input values, which are the production of your either PV or your wind farm. This is your megawatt hours. And this is what it gets converted into. So let's say if you have zero production, you have zero losses. If you have 1 megawatt hour, you have almost no losses. And then you make this conversion table. If you have 100 megawatts, here it could be a factor of a percentage, but you can also set in a function as well if you want to do that, which is here. And then you double click on this one. And then, for example, if you have your wind farm power production, You can say that it is depending on a function, kind of like you would do it in a program like Excel. So you can create it on your own. Yes, and you can also make a lot of other function in this program besides this.
Thank you, Nicholas. But just to, yes, if you were done, or are you going to show some more? Yeah, perfect.
No.
But yes, just to add on to that, Natai, you asked P50, P75, or P90, and as I said, that completely depends on your strategy. So depending on the evaluation that you're doing, what kind of uncertainty do you want to be looking at? Do you want to be looking at just your P50 number, which includes all your losses, or do you want to be taking your P90 into account, which considers your uncertainties as well? So that's more of a business decision, let's say, or a financial decision of what is your evaluation focused on. But typically, you would want to do this at least with a P50, which is basically including all your losses. And even if it's not included already in your time series, then as Nicholas, briefly showed, there are possibilities to also add these losses on in energyPRO, right? Of course, it's based on functions or maybe numbers that you put in, or as a range of the interval of production. So they're not losses that you're calculating, they're just functions that you're introducing. So it's not a calculation of an actual loss, but you have the opportunity or the option to at least be able to add these functions as a loss, or your losses as a function.
Yes.
And if it's not clear, please feel free to, just write a little more in the chat section. And I think, when we go back to the presentation, there's going to be an email address where if you still have further questions or you think of other questions later on, you can always send them our way, right? But for the time being, we'll move on to the next question in order, which is from Akanksha. So Akanksha writes, besides RTC modeling, can we also simulate or analyze other renewable project configurations like FDRE, peak power, and hybrid models? Nicholas, are you familiar with what FDRE?
No.
No. Okay. So just for the Indian audience, maybe there are some abbreviations that we use here in India that are not so popular elsewhere. But I think from what my limited knowledge, FDRE stands for Firm Dispatch Renewable Energy Project. So maybe Akanksha, if you could just write a few words about what exactly FDRE or peak power projects essentially mean, that would be a little more helpful for us to answer, as in what are the requirements under such a tender or such an auction. And until then, maybe the last question, which is hybrid models. Yeah, Nicholas, if you want to take that, can this be used for hybrid modeling?
Yes, it can. It can. I think you should see energyPRO as a program that can do anything within energy balances. So it is a very open program where you can build up it almost how you want it to do with the functions and with the economy. So with hybrids, where we have with the, like, if you remember correctly, with hybrid projects, it could be PTX, right? Or BESS, or if you have an industry that can take something, have a varying production or sector coupling, right? You can put all this into the model and see how your economy will be, how your production should be. You could optimize, use the optimizer towards that to find a battery to peak shave and such on. It is a fairly open. You could see this RTC conversion. This could be anything. Right now, it's just an RTC that has a demand, but it could be anything that could use some electricity.
Yeah. So yes. So Akanksha, I think the short answer to that is yes. As Nicholas very clearly tried explaining, that essentially you could be doing this, as Nicholas said, with power to X, so just pure wind solar storage hybrids as you see over here. The only thing is this looks a little more complicated because of this RTC requirement of 80% versus 20%. But otherwise, if you're doing a pure wind solar storage project modeling and you want to figure out what is the optimal sizing that you should be doing for each of these technologies, that's very, very easily doable with energyPRO as well. Of course, that could be done in WindPro as well, but that really depends on what you want to do, because WindPro has some limitations when we talk about hybrid modeling. But energyPRO provides a lot of flexibility with the different types of technologies, or a lot more details that you might want to include, such as RTC. But Nicholas is showing you one such example.
Yes, so a hybrid here is a build. We have a lot of built-in models into the program, and one of them is, it's basically almost what you see before. We have solar PV, and we have a wind farm. We have electricity demand, and we have a fixed tariff market. So either you could produce electricity to this market throughout your fixed tariff market or through your renewables. And here you have the battery to maximize the uses of your wind farm and your PV. This is a fairly simple model. It will not take long to build this in energyPRO.
And maybe Nicholas already mentioned this, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Nicholas, but all of this, these optimizations or these calculations are essentially done with a very, very advanced solver in the background,
Yes.
and maybe even different solver options, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, like we have different solver options, but what I will recommend is our newest MILP solver. It's not something we have made. It is something I think is based on Stanford University a lot of years ago. We've taken it and made it accessible to everyone. So whenever you press calculate, this solver goes in and find the cheapest price or the way you can generate the most revenue.
Yes. Hopefully that answers part of your question, Akanksha, but if you could just elaborate a little more about what really does a FDRE or a peak power model require, then that would help us answer the question. And until then, maybe we'll just move to the next question, which is from Prachi. Can we make the portfolio estimations for 25 to 30 years instead of taking, let's say, a 20-year time series, is how I understand the question.
Yes, you could do that. We have the finance module, which makes you are able to do calculations over the amount of years you want to. You can have reimbursement in, you can have inflation in, you could have basically whatever you need in order to make this portfolio estimation for 25 to 30 years. You can make changes over the years, saying that your RTC revenue changes or the spot market changes, and you can see how that behaves over this amount of years.
Thank you. And then there's Natsai. How is it different from Homefront and Plexus?
I have not used Homefront and not Plexus either, so I cannot tell. But there's a lot of studies out on energyPRO where it compares it to other softwares. And then you can see usually energyPRO comes out with a broad, it's very positive all around. It's not just something I say as I'm sitting here. It's what the study shows, but and it's partly because how we utilize the MILP solver inside our program.
All right, and then so just for those of you whose questions aren't answered, let's say necessarily with the details just yet, we will, I think, be sending out maybe a common email to all of you that have registered over here with some answers if we don't get around to them in the session over here, right? And as I said, if you still have further questions, we'll present the email address that you can send them to later on. Deepak asks, the inputs are only time series profiles, or essentially can we try and feed other types of information as input to this type of model, or are only time series something that you can work with?
I think at least for wind and solar, you will have the best results with time series if they're done in WindPro, for example. We have built-in solar and wind inside energyPRO, where you can import. That's a time series still, but ERA 5 data or SARA, or I think there's 2 other you can import from all over the world, and then it will do some calculations on your wind farm and your solar. And if I want to add one, it's just right-click, add, and then we have, for example, a wind farm. And then you are able to add data here. The time series here is the one where you can import inside the program. I will still say that by far WindPro gives you the best data. So if it's a big project or something, I will still recommend that. But to give a quick estimation on a windmill or a solar, this is good enough.
And just to add on to that or elaborate on that, as Nicholas was saying, that you could essentially model a time series of production from your wind or solar farm directly, let's say, or let's just say wind for now. We focus on wind via energyPRO, but essentially what it's using in the background is a simple or a power curve, and you feed in your ERA 5 or other data set time series to it, and just to calculate for this capacity of wind farm, what would my generation time series look like? So of course, and that's why Nicholas says that would be best modeled in WindPro, where you can do all of your detailed modeling, whether you have measurements or you don't have measurements, to just be able to do everything else that we usually do when we're working on, let's say, a pure wind project. Right? And I think the second part to Deepak's question was what inputs are required for the battery, essentially?
For the battery, not really much. You have the capacity of the battery, you have the utilization, you have the charging power and the discharging power and efficiency. This one is important because energyPRO also considers that if you have to charge your battery, you will lose some of that, and that's a revenue loss. So if you lose 5% in and out, which is around 7.5% in total, it will consider that for the total cost compared to using the spot market. You have these max capacity, which can be done as a formula as well, meaning that it can count cycles and actually degrade your battery over time. You're also able to make a time series here for how you would consider your battery capacity to be over the years, so you can model the degradation better. You have non-availability periods, so if you know there's times where you cannot utilize your battery, you can model that as well. And you can also make it only be available for a period. This could be saying that I know in 3 years' time I have this battery, and I want to make a calculation for now, 3 years ahead, and then maybe 10 years more with this battery, and how will my economy look? So you don't really need much. You don't need the model. This energyPRO is based on megawatt hours and energy balances and economy based on that, and not so much the physics. The physics is something you need to model inside the functions or in your time series.
Thank you, Nicholas. And I know I'm jumping questions over here, but Vikas, I see you have a question about battery charging and discharging logic. I don't know if that answered your question, whatever Nicholas was just showing now. And if that does not answer your question, and there's more to it that you would like to know, please, elaborate on your question if you would like to. And the next question in order is, can we plan best augmentation plan also? Or for the battery, some sort of augmentation plan? Is that something that we could do with energyPRO?
I think it also kind of leans up towards the question you said before about making a strategy for the battery. And the strategy for this battery is to maximize the profit. Basically, what I mean with that is that in this scenario, which I'm showing here, is that you have a wind farm, a solar, which has economy connected to it. For example, this has a maintenance cost, meaning they will have a very low cost of production, and then you have this market to import from. This battery will make sure that we can maximize the usage of our solar and PV if it's cheaper. If we have for example, if we imported a spot market where we sometimes have very low prices, and it will see that we exceed the prices of a wind or solar, then it will utilize the spot market rather than utilize the battery, because you don't get any benefit from the battery. It will rather curtail your solar or wind farm. For example, in Denmark, we sometimes have negative spot prices. So here, energyPRO would actually utilize the spot market rather than your wind farm or solar, even though it's almost zero production cost on these two. You are able to, as I showed before, make some kind of what you call it, strategy, and is with the non-availability periods or with through your payments.
Perfect. Thank you. And I think there are a few questions, or maybe a lot of them, maybe even lean towards if you want to touch upon the interface module, Niklas, because I think there's been some interest, of course, in the combination of wind solar storage and finding optimal numbers in terms of maybe capacity of these individual technologies.
Yes, I'll try to make it brief, because I think already energyPRO is quite hard to get into. So I'll just try to say quickly what our interface module is. And interface module is that you could have it runs through Excel, and you can say, I would like to check 10 different capacities for my solar PV, and I would like to see these KPIs. I would like to see how much money I earn and how much I can produce with these capacities. And then what it will do, it will run all these calculations through, and you can take them out in Excel. Yes, so you can make many more calculations right after each other, rather than when we don't run through interface, you will have to edit them and run it, or have multiple scenarios at the bottom.
So in essence, if you're trying to find your optimal capacities, then the interface module in energyPRO is an excellent tool, because then you're running these multiple calculations in sort of one go. Right?
Or if you would like to make a feasibility analysis saying, okay, what happens if my spot market goes up 10%, down 10%? What if I had, for example, with this RTC, what if that was 300 instead of 200, 250, or maybe what if it was 200? You can make all these calculations, and you can get the results almost immediately.
All right. And then the next question is from Rajeshwari. Can this software optimize the combination of solar, wind, battery, and PHP? I'm assuming maybe that stands for pumped hydropower, and throw some optimized numbers. So I think the first part, Niklas just answered that it can be used. It can be used for that. But yeah, Niklas, just to show, Niklas is showing you that you can also include pumped hydro power plants. So essentially, before Niklas gets into that, you could be using any technology. It doesn't matter. It's just to what details, what level of depth you want to go in and throw in your information, details, constraints. That may or may not differ. But I'll hand it over to Niklas for the pumped hydro part.
Yes, I'm just showcasing that we have a built-in storage as a hydro pumping station, and we also have a guide on how to set this up on our homepage. So it is possible, yes, fairly easily, and it's based on the same way as you have your battery. You have these input values, which is quite easy to find, and then it will optimize towards that. If you're not sure how big of volume you need or something like that, you could also use the interface to make several volumes or use the optimizer. So yes.
Yes, thank you. At any given point in time, do the RTC calculations the full plant capacity?
I can show you. We get these reports, which I briefly went through. I think it's this one, right? Yes. Are you able to see it, energyPRO model now?
Yes.
And then I think it's you can see here I took out a report of the our energy production. There's no economy in here, but you can see here how much is produced. Yes.
Sorry, Nicholas, could we just zoom in a little bit? It's quite
Of course.
difficult to read otherwise.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
I think this is better now, right?
Yeah.
You can see we have our wind farm, we have our PV plant, and we have our battery. And then you can see how much is utilized. You can see the peak here. You can see how many cycles your battery has been through in a year. And you can also, at the bottom here, you have these key figures, which basically says how many turns on does it have, how many operating hours, how many full load operating hours, and the utilization factor. And the utilization here is how much is compared to the maximum capacity. And this is for with the battery. And if I took the same report out, for example, without the battery here, you will also see our utilization factor will be much lower. Only 50 and 40% here. The other way. And we had 70% before, or 80% almost. And these reports, they can actually be copied out, and then you can put them into Excel and do further analysis on these reports. So you can just directly import this to Excel. And you can do that with all our reports here. So the economy, you can also export that. Yes.
And Prahlada, just to add on to that, if I maybe Nicholas's explanation already answered your question, but if because we do get this question quite often when we're talking about hybrid projects, especially, but if your question is if you're feeding in your P50 time series, can I ever expect my wind power plant to actually hit the max capacity in terms of maximum production? Then that essentially depends on the input time series. So if your P50 time series, if at any point in that time series you have absolutely no losses, then of course your time series within that time series is the inherent full power that you're actually producing. But if that's not what you were referring to, then I hope Nicholas's question answers your question. Yuvraj, yes, firm dispatchable renewable energy, but yes, that's the point where we would need a little more information as to what that really means, because of course maybe we don't have such a type of a tender or an auction or a type of project business model in other countries. Maybe it's very specific to India, or maybe it's called by a different name in other countries. So if you could just elaborate a little bit about what FDRE projects essentially look like, then we can answer that question. Natsai asks about energyPRO detailed training price. So everything to do with the modules and the pricing and the training price as well is something that maybe we could take up over an email, because maybe you don't need to do the whole training, or maybe you just need to get trained in a specific part of energyPRO. But Nicholas is again the expert on energyPRO, so I'll let him maybe elaborate a little more on that.
I agree what you say. That just reach out to sales and what you need, and then it's easier to figure out the right price, because we have these generic introductory programs, and then we can also customize them, and the customization is fairly individual depending on what people want. We also have a guide on how to set up interface module, and I also think Olga will talk a little bit about that. You can get access to energyPRO for free for 14 days as well. So you are able to try it, use the guides and see if you can get it to work, and then get back to us. Then I think it will be easier, because then you know specifically what you need.
And just to add on to that, I'm more of the WinPro user and trainer, and what I can tell you from my experience of having been to an energyPRO course as well is that it's an extremely easy software to learn especially in comparison to WinPro. Of course, WinPro is a very different focus, but energyPRO is extremely easy to learn and use as well. It's a very intuitive interface that it has, right? So that's my experience of it. But everything about the training, the modules, and the pricing, Olga has dropped an email address and a number. You can reach out to that email address, and we'll take it from there, because it really depends on your requirements. Is it possible to define battery charging, discharging logic? As I said earlier, because Nicholas did show something, and if that did not answer your question, please elaborate a little more. Dishit asks, hi Dishit, based on the total power demand in the final RTC, does energyPRO optimize the wind farm and solar farm dispatch capacity according to the resource availability?
So if
Nicholas,
I remember, I don't think I fully understand the question, but I can say what it does, and then maybe it will hit what you ask about. But basically, when I put in some what you call it time series for this PV and wind farm, this is what available. energyPRO will shortfall the production on either one of these two if there's no what they call it capacity on your RTC. If I open up the spot market, it will just deliver that, but it will focus on where the most money are, meaning that if you have a really good RTC deal, that it will always optimize towards getting the maximum towards your RTC, especially if it sees that your punishment payment will start hitting in. It will see that that payment will make you lose so much money that it will have your full priority. And it will do that through the battery, because that's the only thing you can utilize that the best. And when you do the optimization towards the battery, as the module I showed you, then it will also consider that finding the right size for your battery. So it will consider the payment, the punishment payment, how much production you have available, and the investment cost of it. Meaning that it will find a place, an optimum where your investment cost, your payback time would be good enough for the investment you make inside the battery. For example, if you take a too big of battery, you will not utilize it fully in a year, and sometimes it will actually make the punishment payment if it doesn't see that it happens more than once or a couple of megawatts, but it cannot because the investment cost is too big otherwise.
Thank you. And again, Dishit, if that did not answer the question, please feel free to maybe try and explain that again. Mayank asks, how many modules of energyPRO is required for RTC application? Is that a quick one to answer, or do we do that over series?
I can do it fairly quick. I would say that if you want to do it multiple years, you would need the design, the finance. If you want to do the optimization I talked about, you need the optimize module. Also, you will need, if you want to do the interface, you'll need the interface module as well. But maybe we can, if we have time, go into the PowerPoint to show the modules here, and then we can talk from that.
And then since we have about 6 minutes left, maybe when we're back in the PowerPoint, we can try and wrap this up. And again, while Nicholas brings up the presentation, if anything has not been clarified, not been answered, please feel free to reach out. And I think you will get an email from us anyway that'll have all the information you need. And Olga, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we also will show you where you can find these guides if you choose to get the demo license or this free trial period, so you can look through the guides yourself, much like the WinPro user manual.
I would like to just make it clear that this 2 weeks free license gives access to all the energyPRO modules. So it's not actually demo; it's full version.
Yes. I would say finance, accounts, design is what's built in, meaning that you can only lock your production for 1 year. The operation, you can actually make an operational optimization, saying that you can look at today and see how much store I have my battery, how my production will be the next couple of days, and you can look to a smaller period of time. The finance is more long-term, 10, 15, 25 years. The optimize is a really good module as well, where you can go in and find the optimal size, as you talked about a couple of times. And we have the compare module. And this is what I showed you before, that you need to be able to compare different models. So I'd also recommend that. And if you want to have access to our online database with the region, I will also consider that. But as Olga said, that you will get access to everything. So look into what you use and then note that, and then it will be easier. And my sales team are also very happy to help with this.